Hey, I'm Roger, and I never thought the deepest betrayal of my life would happen at my wife's memorial. My daughter took the stage and erased me from her mother's story. The next day, she sold Clarice's necklace, the one I gave her the night we got married, and drained our joint account. And then, she called me crying. But the worst part isn't what she did. It's what she said when she thought I had nothing left. Would you still stay silent if your own blood turned your grief into a weapon? They say grief don't always come loud. Sometimes, it's a whisper, a creak in the floorboard when you expect her voice. I stood there, pressed suit, polished shoes, shoulders straight at a church packed with faces I'd seen for decades, but none of them could fill the emptiness where Clarice used to stand. I'm Roger, 66 years old, retired train conductor, South Side, born and raised. I ran those rails my whole life, watched the world blur by from the conductor's window. But nothing ever passed me like the day Clarice left. Gospel hummed low in the background. The choir wore deep blue robes, swaying just a little offbeat. That was Clarice's way, never demanded perfection, just heart. Folks came up, said their pieces, told stories about her kindness, her sweet potato pie, how she took care of the neighborhood kids like they were her own. I nodded, smiled, but I couldn't stop thinking how my own children barely spoke to me during the planning. Mariah, my daughter, sharp as ever, controlled the whole memorial like it was a board meeting. Not once did she ask what I wanted. Daryl just stood near the back, arms folded, like he'd rather be anywhere else. And then there was Patrice, Clarice's sister, hovering, correcting flower arrangements like she ran the place. When I suggested Clarice's favorite hymn, Patrice brushed it off with, "We already picked the set list." Funny, I thought I was her husband. But maybe grief rewrites the rules. Maybe I was just a seat filler today. Then I heard it. Right as the choir swelled into His Eyes on the Sparrow, Mariah whispered too loud to her cousin. "It's already gone. We had to pawn the necklace for the service." That necklace. My knees nearly buckled. Clarice's pearls, passed down from her grandmother, saved through hard times, worn only on sacred days. She used to say, "This ain't just jewelry, Rog, it's legacy." We had agreed. It was supposed to go with her, buried on her chest, like a crown on a queen. I turned toward them slowly. Didn't speak, just watched. Mariah didn't notice, but Patrice did. She leaned over and said, "We didn't think you'd notice." That hit like a slap. I folded the pain, tucked it behind my collar like a loose thread. A man learns not to scream, just keeps breathing. The rest of the service blurred. Afterward, I shook hands, accepted condolences. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my coat, glanced at the screen. Overdraft notice. Available balance, $12.54. What? I stood frozen. That account had nearly $8,000 last week. I'd saved it up over years, overtime shifts, second jobs, quiet dinners. Not much, but enough to hold me steady in old age. Clarice's funeral shouldn't have emptied that. I left early. Told folks I wasn't feeling well. Walked home slow, each step heavier than the last. Inside, I loosened my tie, turned on the old lamp by the recliner, and logged in to my account. Gone. All of it. Withdrawals made over several days. Authorized by Mariah. I remembered her voice, soft and pleading. "Daddy, just make it joint. It'll be easier to pay the funeral home. I'll handle it." I thought I was helping. Turns out I was handing her the keys. I sat there, stared at the screen, then looked at Clarice's Bible on the side table. Still marked at the verse she loved, "Be still and know that I am God." But stillness felt like surrender now. I didn't sleep that night. Just Saturday. Next day, around dinner time, the phone rang. Mariah. Her voice was trembling. Not like her usual rehearsed tone. This was panic. "Daddy, something happened. The pawn shop got raided. They're saying the necklace was reported stolen. The police, they're asking questions." I didn't answer. She kept talking, fast and frantic. I didn't know, Daddy. I didn't mean for it to go this way. Please, you gotta help me. They think I forged something. I just needed money for the service. Silence. Daddy, please, say something. Inside me, the battle began. Love versus betrayal. She was my child, but so was Clarice's dignity. I gripped the receiver tighter, closed my eyes. She didn't mean to? Or she didn't mean to get caught? Then I did something I'd never done before. I hung up. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't say anything. Just ended it. That was the first time I ever hung up on my own daughter. I didn't sleep a wink that night. My body lay still, but my mind wrestled the whole time, tossing between confusion, anger, and the quiet ache of being betrayed by your own blood. By dawn, I sat up slow, rubbed my knees, and told myself, they might take everything, but they don't get to take my memories too. I poured a lukewarm cup of coffee, left it untouched on the counter, and grabbed Clarice's Bible, not out of habit, out of need. Her handwriting still sat in the margins, little notes like, "Don't forget, Roger, you are worthy." I held that book against my chest like it might steady the shaking inside me. Mariah had mentioned the name Big Sam's Pawn, off 79th. I knew the place. Always looked run down, tucked between a fried fish joint and a liquor store. Still, I put on my old Sunday suit. This wasn't just business. This was about something sacred. Stepping out, the world kept spinning. Sirens in the distance. Dogs barking behind chain-link fences. The rumble of the L overhead. Life moved like it didn't care. I was grieving. Like I was invisible in it all. When I reached Big Sam's, the bell above the door gave a weak jingle. The place smelled like rust, dust, and regret. Shelves cluttered with old electronics, guitars with busted strings, gold chains tangled in piles like they meant nothing to anyone. Behind the counter stood a man too big for the stool he sat on. Bald, with tired eyes and thick forearms, covered in tattoos that looked faded like old ink on skin too stretched. He looked up, squinted. "You're Clarice's man, ain't you?" I nodded. "I figured you'd come," he said, standing up with a grunt. "Didn't feel right, the way it all went down." "I'm here for the necklace," I said, flat. Sam scratched his chin. "You know the cops already poked around, yeah?" "I'm not the cops." He studied me, then reached under the counter, pulled out a small black box. My heart beat heavy like a bass drum. He didn't hand it over just yet. "We opened the locket," he said, voice low. "Had to for inventory. What we found inside wasn't just sentimental." My breath hitched. I didn't even know it opened. Sam opened the box slowly and set it down. Inside, Clarice's pearl necklace sat coiled like a sleeping memory. The locket at its center was slightly ajar. He picked it up, pressed gently, and the locket popped open again. Inside was a tiny photo, faded and creased. Clarice, young, holding a baby. Not Mariah, not Daryl, some other child I'd never seen. Behind the photo, folded tight, was a small piece of yellowed paper. Sam handed it to me. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Clarice's handwriting. A partial will, dated just months before her death. To Roger, if anything happens to me, know that the account at Holy First Union is only yours. I never trusted them with it. I swallowed the knot rising in my throat. She meant to protect me, I whispered. Even now. Sam sighed. They brought it in real fast, like they were in a rush to make it disappear. Something felt off. I nodded, still staring at the paper. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about her trust. Her trying to speak to me, even from the grave. I tucked the letter and the necklace into my coat pocket. Sam reached across, placed a firm hand on the counter. "You all right, man?" "No," I said, "but I will be." I walked out without another word. The sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows that moved as slow as my steps. I didn't rush. I let the weight of what I held settle. Clarice had known. She had seen the cracks forming in our family long before I did. Maybe that's why she kept this secret her way of protecting me from the storm she knew would come. I should have listened more, I muttered to myself. When Clarice said, "Don't let him wear you down, baby." At the corner, I paused. I thought about calling Mariah. Thought about shouting into the phone. But what good would that do? Not yet. Not until I knew everything. I pulled out my old flip phone, scrolled to a name I hadn't dialed in years. Earl. Retired detective. Old friend. Still owed me a few favors. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth. Because now I understood this wasn't just a theft. This was a setup. And I was done sitting quietly. The text came early that afternoon. We should talk. All of us. That's all it said. But I felt my stomach tighten, like it already knew what was coming. With my family, talk never meant healing. It meant judgment. I stared at the screen for a long while, the words looking harmless but sharp underneath. I thought about ignoring it. Lord knows I wanted to. But I also knew if I didn't face them on my own terms, they'd find a way to twist the story. So I replied, "My house, 5 o'clock. Fresh pot of coffee, set out 4 mugs, and left one chair empty, the one Clarice always sat in. Her Bible still rested on the table beside it, open to Psalms. The air in the house felt heavy, like it knew we were about to dig up something ugly. I looked around and whispered, "I'm not just grieving you, baby. I'm grieving the family I thought we built." 5 on the dot, the doorbell rang. Mariah walked in first, wearing that same tight composure she used at the memorial. Behind her came Glenn, my nephew, loud as ever, and Teresa, Clarice's younger sister. Eyes red but voice steady. "Daddy," Mariah started, soft but rehearsed, "we're just worried about you." "Worried?" I said. "That's new." Glenn cut in before she could answer. "We just think you're not handling Mom's affairs right. There's money missing. From the estate." I leaned back slow, sipping my coffee. "Money missing, huh? You mean the money you already took?" Glenn puffed his chest. "Don't get defensive, Uncle Roger. We just want to see the records." Then Teresa jumped in, her tone fake sweet, like she practiced in the mirror. "Clarice told me she felt mistreated near the end, said you were keeping things from her." That one landed deep. Mistreated? I spent every night wiping her forehead, feeding her soup, whispering prayers while she slept. And now, the same people who barely called were rewriting my wife's last year like a gossip column. Mariah reached into her bag, pulled out some papers, and slid them across the table. "This is Mom's real will," she said. "You're not the only beneficiary." The signature line was blank. My hands trembled, not with fear, but fury trying to hold itself back. I took a breath, closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back 6 months before she passed. Clarice sitting on the porch, phone in her hand, face turned away when I came out. She used to text late, deleting messages soon after. Once I walked in and heard her whispering, "Yes, Pastor J, I understand." She ended the call the moment she saw me. When I asked, she smiled. "Church business, Roger. You wouldn't understand." And I didn't press, because love teaches you to trust even when it makes you blind. But now I saw everything clear. Love blinds you, but betrayal it makes you see in high definition. Maybe she was manipulated. Maybe they all were. Or maybe I'd been too gentle, too willing to believe people's best instead of facing their worst. I opened my eyes again, staring straight at Mariah. "You never cared about truth," I said quietly. "You just wanted control." Her eyes flashed. "You think you're some victim? You think you can talk to me like that after what you did?" "What I did," I said, leaning forward, "was love your mother while you were too busy counting her jewelry." The room went still. Then Glenn shouted, "You're hiding something!" Teresa started crying. Mariah's jaw tightened, and I slammed my hand down on the table so hard the mugs rattled. "Get out of my house." Mariah stood, voice sharp as glass. "You're not the man Mom said you were." I met her eyes. "No, I said. "I'm stronger." They left in a storm of muttering and slamming doors. I sat there, alone again. A broken glass lay near the edge of the table, a crack running through it like a scar. I stared at it, breathing heavy but steady. The silence after they left was louder than their voices. As I started to clean up, my old landline, barely used anymore, started to beep. One new message. I pressed play. Static. Then her voice. Clarice. "Roger, if anything happens to me." Her breath shook. "Don't trust Mariah. Don't trust the new will." The message clicked off. My knees gave way. All this time I thought I'd buried her truth, but she'd left me a map. Her voice brought everything into focus, clear, sharp, undeniable, and nothing would ever be the same again. I must have replayed that voicemail 20 times. Clarice's voice shaky but clear-cut through everything else. Don't trust Mariah. Don't trust the new will. It echoed even while I set the chairs, lit the corner lamp, and placed her old handkerchief on the dresser. That one with the embroidery Forever L. It still smelled faintly of her perfume. The house was clean, quiet, but I didn't feel peace. I felt pressure building under my ribs. Mariah texted again, said they'd swing by here first, then head to the church. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, looking at Clarice's chair, left purposefully empty. Every meeting in this house used to be filled with laughter, food, memories. Now, it was like setting a courtroom. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to decide what parts of me still mattered. The knock came at 5:45. Mariah entered first, wearing that guarded face. Behind her, Patrice had that smirk she wore like jewelry. Glenn last, eyes darting like he expected a trap. "Smells like the old days," Patrice said, fake smile stretching her cheeks. "Mom used to say family meant everything." Mariah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quick and flipped it face down. Too quick. I noticed. "What's that?" I asked, my voice low. "Nothing, Dad." I looked right at her. I know a lie when I hear it. She hesitated. Patrice cut in. "Roger, let's not make this." "No." I stood. "If there's a message that concerns me, let me see it." Mariah stiffened, then slowly picked up her phone. After a second of tapping, she turned the screen to me. A text read, "He's hiding things. I know she left him letters." Silence slammed into the room. I took a long breath, nodded. "So you planned this ambush?" Mariah crossed her arms. "We just want the truth." "You don't want the truth," I said. "You want to control the story." They didn't argue. They just told me it was time to head to the church. We drove in separate cars. I followed them like a man trailing his own name. Inside the fellowship hall, there it was laid out on the table. Printed memorial programs. Photos of Clarice, smiling, radiant. But my name gone. I picked one up, hands shaking, trying to find it. It read, "In loving memory, from Clarice, from Mariah and Glenn." Nothing about me, not even husband. I looked up slowly. "Where's my name?" Patrice blinked. It must have been a mistake, typographical oversight. I laughed once, bitter and hollow. An oversight? All these years, I made space for Clarice to shine, for Mariah to grow, for this family to feel whole. I let myself disappear so they could feel full. But now they wanted me erased completely. I placed the program down carefully. I buried her. I held her hand when she took her last breath. That ain't something you forget, and I won't let you forget it either. Patrice turned cold. "Roger, don't turn this into a fight." "It already is." Glenn muttered something under his breath. Mariah stared at the floor. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd just sit there, nod, disappear into the background. But they forgot one thing. I'm still standing, and I'm watching. In the noise and scattered voices, while they debated details and arrangements, Mariah stepped outside to take a call. She left her purse behind, her phone resting on top. I walked over, slow and sure, like a man who'd earned the right to know. Unlocked, no code. Deep in the voice memos tucked between music notes and half-finished grocery lists, there it was. A file labeled, "For Dad, Clarice." I didn't even press play, just stood there staring at it, heart hammering. She'd recorded something. Not for the church, not for the kids, for me. She left me words I never expected, and she entrusted her daughter to hide them. By the time evening shadows crept across my living room, I had everything spread out on the table like I was building my own case in a courtroom I never asked to be in. Clarice's voice memo, the pawn receipt, the locket, the torn will fragment, all laid out in a perfect line. Her handwriting still trembled across the page. For Roger, trust no one. I played the memo one more time, just to hear her voice, soft but urgent. If anything happens to me, you keep the house in your name. Don't let them change it. I stopped the recording and stared out the window, my reflection barely visible against the dim light. Then I took a notepad and wrote 3 names: Mariah, Patrice, Glenn. Underneath, one word: betrayal. I picked up the phone and called Rue, my old friend who used to work the county office. "Rue," I said, my voice steady. "You still got access to estate filings?" "Depends on what you're looking for," he replied. "My wife's trust. Somebody changed it after she passed. I need copies." He paused. "You think family did it?" "I don't think," I said flatly. "I know. I'll get you what you need." I hung up, staring at Clarice's photo on the wall. "You trusted me to keep things right," I whispered. "But now I gotta clean up what they destroyed." The clock ticked toward 6. My chest felt tight, not from fear, but readiness. This moment wasn't optional anymore. Then came the knock. When I opened the door, they were all standing there like a storm waiting to happen. Mariah in front, Patrice behind her, and Glenn hovering like backup muscle. Mariah said, "Daddy, we need to talk." I stepped aside, said nothing. They walked in without waiting for permission. The air felt heavy, full of what they weren't saying. Patrice glanced around the room, wrinkling her nose. "You've been digging again," she said, spotting the papers. "You really think this obsession's gonna fix anything?" Glenn crossed his arms. "You always thought you were the smartest one in the room, huh? Always the final word, even when you're wrong." I let the words land, but didn't answer. I watched them every blink, every twitch. Patrice picked up one document. "You seriously think this is real? These could have been printed by anyone. You've been watching too much TV." I finally spoke. "Then why do you all look guilty just standing in front of it?" That shut her up for a moment. Mariah said quietly, "We came to tell you to stop, Daddy. You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing?" I asked. "No, sweetheart. Embarrassing is erasing your father's name from your mother's memorial." I reached for one of the printed programs and slid it across the table. Her face drained of color. "That's a typo," she whispered. "You know how printing goes." "Don't lie," I said sharply. "That wasn't a typo. That was deliberate." The room went still. Then I picked up another document one Rue had just emailed me an hour ago. "This is from the church," I said, laying it down. "The trust Clarice and I built." "My name was taken off the records. You replaced me with yours." Patrice spoke quickly. "You signed those papers last summer, remember? You said it was for community donations." I shook my head slowly. "You handed me an envelope and said it was for flowers." "You switched documents behind my back," Glenn snorted. "You got no proof." I tapped the locket resting beside the papers. "That's where you're wrong. I got your mother's voice, her words, her handwriting, everything you thought you buried with her." Mariah's eyes filled with panic. "You can't do this. You'll ruin us." "No," I said quietly, standing to my full height. "You ruined yourselves when you decided your greed was worth more than your mother's truth." For the first time, no one looked me in the eye. The silence between us stretched long enough to feel like punishment. Then, I slammed the folder shut. "Tomorrow morning," I said, "I'm filing for a court injunction. Every account, every signature, every transfer, they'll all see daylight." Patrice's mouth tightened. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." Glenn turned toward Mariah. "We're done here." They started for the door. Mariah lingered, whispering, You used to be better than this. I looked right at her. No, I just stopped letting you decide who I get to be. The door closed behind them, and for a moment the house felt heavier than ever, but not empty. I sat down again, picked up the locket, and held it tight in my palm. The pearls pressed into my skin until it hurt. You thought you could bury me, I whispered, but they never learned some roots run too deep. Night had fallen quiet by the time I sat in my living room alone again. The evidence spread out like a battlefield. I played Clarice's voice memo one more time, her tone soft, yet fierce. Don't trust Mariah. Don't trust the new will. I let her words linger, feeling each syllable sharpen in the dim light. I matched those words with the pawn slip in my hand, the letter folded inside the locket, and the text hidden on Mariah's phone. Inconsistencies jumped out, dates changed, signatures altered, omissions where I shouldn't have been removed. I dialed Rue again. Rue, can you get me a hidden recording device? I need proof. They can't deny, he answered, after a pause. I can borrow you one. Quiet, small, but it'll do. I steadied my breathing, feeling the weight shift. They pushed me long enough. Tonight, I would speak. I thought of all the nights I stayed silent so my children could grow. All the winters Clarice and I stayed together so I wouldn't lose her. I reminded myself, strength isn't loud. But tonight, I'd refuse to be invisible. There was a knock at my door before I could hide the files. Zariah entered first, her face calm but sharp. Behind her came Patrice and Glenn. I rose slowly, stepping forward. Tonight, I said, I show you what you feared you'd never hear. I pressed play on my phone. Clarice's voice filled the room, naming Mariah, warning, accusing, bearing truth. Shock flashed across Zariah's features. Patrice paled. Glenn shifted uneasy. Zariah stammered, That's private, how did you? I paused it. Because your edits can't hide people's voices. Did you delete your mother's name from that memorial because you feared people would side with me? Silence answered. I asked Mariah to replay the video she showed at the memorial. She hesitated, but she played it. And like I expected, the phone's recording device captured what she didn't plan to show, a version where my lines had been cut, the sentiment manipulated. I looked at them when the altered footage played my words missing, my presence edited out. Glenn tried snatching the phone. I stood firm, holding it. You thought I'd be silent forever. You misread my education, misread my strength. They couldn't deny what they heard. Then from behind, I heard a soft voice. Amari. She stepped forward, trembling. Grandpa, she said, your name belongs there. She held the memorial folder and placed the missing page back where it belonged. Mariah's eyes grew wide. She opened her mouth, tried to block Amari, but I stepped between them. She will not be silenced like I was, I said. Zariah's jaw hardened. Patrice remained motionless. Glenn shifted his weight. Before anyone said more, the moment cracked. Zariah stormed off. Patrice stood frozen, face pale. Mariah looked at me, eyes hurt, eyes fearing. As the door shut behind them, I retrieved the mailbox letter I hadn't checked. It was from a law firm, an injunction confirming I may reclaim administrative control over Clarice's estate. I stood in that quiet night, heart racing. They served me papers, and just like that, the ground shifted beneath them. The house was quiet that night, too quiet. The kind of silence that carries weight. I sat in my study, the only sound coming from the ticking of the old clock and the soft hum of the streetlight outside. On the desk in front of me lay Clarice's handkerchief, the one with the tiny words stitched in her favorite blue thread forever, L. I rubbed the fabric between my fingers until it warmed under my hand. Her voice memo played again, the same one I'd heard too many times to count. But tonight, it felt different. The words cut deeper. If I ever leave, protect my name. I whispered. I'm trying, baby. I really am. Just then, Rue arrived, coat still damp, carrying a box that looked older than either of us. Found these, he said, setting it down gently. Church ledgers, old estate filings, donation records. I had to sneak 'em out the back office. I exhaled, half in disbelief. You think she's in there somewhere? If Clarice put her trust in that church, he said, then her truth's buried right under their nose. We didn't waste time. We opened the ledgers, page after page filled with neat, fading lines of ink. Every entry smelled of dust and years gone by. Around midnight, my eyes caught her name, Clarice Crow. Last wishes. The column beside it read, received. But the signature block was empty. They got it, I said quietly, but they never filed it. Rue frowned, leaning closer. That means the original will's valid. They just pretended it didn't exist. My heart was pounding like it wanted out of my chest. I remembered Clarice sitting in that same church office, back when we volunteered together, sorting envelopes, laughing when the copier jammed. I never thought the place she loved would betray her. I opened the next drawer in the filing cabinet, and something fell to the floor. A sealed envelope, yellowed from time. My name written in her hand. To my husband, after I'm gone. For a moment, the world stopped moving. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter, the ink still dark and sharp. Roger, if this reaches you, it means something changed that I didn't approve. If they ever rewrite my will without your knowledge, it isn't mine. Protect what we built together. They may twist my legacy, but they can't twist my love for you. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. She knew. She saw all this coming. Rue read quietly over my shoulder, then looked up. Roger, this letter is legal standing. It proves intent. You can challenge every last paper they touched. I closed my fist around it. Then I will. Morning came slow, gray light creeping through the church windows as Rue and I stood in front of the board. 4 of them sat there, familiar faces, pretending to look surprised. I laid the documents on the table. This letter was written by my wife and received by your clerk. It's been sitting in your archives. The oldest man cleared his throat. We have no record of any such document. I looked him dead in the eye. You're looking at it now. He leaned back. You can't just come in here accusing people. I cut him off. I'm not accusing. I'm showing proof. I slid the ledger across the table, my finger pressing the stamp that said received. Rue held up the envelope. Your seal, he said. Right there. The woman at the end of the table whispered, How did he get this? I didn't raise my voice, but every word carried weight. Clarice trusted this church. You turned that trust into a vault for your own agenda. I want her records corrected, my name restored to the trust, and I want it done before the week is out. Nobody answered. Not one of them could look me in the face. Rue gathered the documents, his expression unreadable. As we turned to leave, I heard one of the men mutter, This will stir up trouble. I stopped at the door. Trouble's what you get when you build lies on sacred ground. Outside, the morning air felt different, lighter, sharper. Rue walked beside me in silence until we reached the steps. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket. Roger, he said, I found this while you were confronting them. It was another pawn shop slip, creased and fragile. Another one? I asked. He nodded. Older than the first, dated months before Clarice passed. But look here, different name. I took the paper, my hand trembling as I read the signature. Not mine, not hers. Someone close. My voice came out low, almost a growl. That pawnshop slip proves there's more to this betrayal than I imagined. The morning air was different, not heavy, not quiet, just still, like the world finally exhaled. I woke before the sun had fully climbed up, sat out on my old porch, same spot I used to hold Clarice's hand on Sunday mornings before church. The wood beneath me cracked like it remembered. I held that little handkerchief she'd stitched years ago, forever, L, pressed between my palms. It felt warmer than the breeze brushing through the trees. Bells from the church started ringing. The sound drifted easy through the street. Somewhere down the block, someone's screen door creaked. A child laughed. A dog barked back. Life was starting up again. And I sat there, staring into it all. Last night, it shook something loose. They tried to bury me in shame. twist who I was. But standing in front of them, telling the truth, with Clarice's voice in my pocket, I felt stronger than I had in months. A few neighbors passed by. Mr. Langston, from 3 houses down, tipped his cap. The Johnson twins waved shy, like they didn't know what to say. That was all right. I didn't need an apology from them. I just needed this. Stillness. Today wasn't about payback. Not anymore. It was about reclaiming my peace. I went back inside. My knees ached a little. The house still smelled like lemon oil and old wood. I walked over to the table and sat, the letter still folded neat where I left it. Clarice's handwriting had always looked like her speech, graceful, sure, not rushed. I unfolded the last page. Read it slowly, out loud, like she was sitting right there across from me. If you're reading this, it said, then the noise has gotten loud around you. I hope you haven't let it shape you. You've always been quiet strength, Roger. But don't let their loud lies steal your love. Let your love outlive your grief. My chest tightened. Not like anger. More like release. Like the grief had finally found an open window. She went on. Don't become them. Don't make bitterness your voice. Make legacy your answer. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, face in my hands, and I cried, quietly. Nobody watching, no stage to perform on. Just me and her words, breaking something inside me I didn't know still needed breaking. When I stood again, I felt lighter. Outside, the morning had fully opened. The sun painted everything gold. I slipped the letter back into its envelope, pressed it against my heart for a second, then left. The walk to the church was slow. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to feel each step. I passed by the community garden where Clarice used to teach little kids how to plant tomatoes. Saw Rue setting out folding chairs by the courtyard. Amari stood beside her, holding a single sunflower. That child had her grandma's eyes. People gathered, maybe 20, maybe 30. Some familiar, some I hadn't seen since Clarice's funeral. There were hesitant glances, but also soft smiles. I nodded to each one. Thank y'all for coming, I said, my voice low but clear. I know some of y'all stayed quiet through all this mess. And I don't hold that against you. I looked around, faces listened. I ain't here today to relive what happened. I'm here to honor the woman who gave her life to this community. Clarice loved with her hands, with her time, and even in her death, she left a voice for the truth. There was a hush, heavy but respectful. I turned my gaze to the edge of the crowd. Zariah stood there, eyes red, arms crossed, but not in defiance, more like defense. I spoke to her without venom. You made choices I'll never understand, I said, but I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to tell you you don't have to keep running from dignity. You can choose it today. Zariah looked down, didn't move, but tears slid down her cheek. Someone clapped softly. Then, more followed. Rue nodded through wet eyes. Amari walked over and placed her sunflower on the podium. For her grandma, for the truth. I stepped back and let silence do the rest. When it was done, I walked away. Didn't rush, didn't look for a ride, just walked. Past the trees, past the sidewalk, cracks Clarice used to skip over. Past the old shop with the broken ice machine. I turned once, looked back at the church courtyard, held the little locket in my hand. I came here carrying grief, I whispered. I leave carrying my name. A weight was gone now. I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking into something new. Amari caught up, slipped her hand into mine. Where are we going now, Grandpa? I smiled. Wherever peace leads. We strolled on. I didn't feel like fighting anymore. I didn't need to prove anything to anybody. We stopped at the corner where the sun hit hardest. I looked up, sky wide above. They thought I'd be buried under their lies, I said to myself. But I chose to rise beyond them, and I knew then, this was not the end. It was the beginning of my life reclaimed.